Welcome, everyone, to RB1 Colon, a fantasy football podcast, part of the Fake Kings podcast channel. I am the consummate professional, first-ranking officer of the Terry McLaurin Stand Club, diamond mounter at the Jerry Judy Jewelry Company, and BFFs with the Oracle, your humble host, Pete Rogers, and I am joined by all of the guys. We have the Duck Father, believer in the Deshaun Watson gospel, founder and lone proprietor of the Gus the Bus Four Seasons busing service, and caster of the double reverse chutzpah, resident old man Clark Barnes, Scotty Miller fanboy, mule skinner of the Zachers Decline Wagon, head excavator of the Robert Tanyan Canyon, and proud father Quentin Nelson, the tight end whisperer Jordan Smith, and finally, doubter of John Gruden's Jacobs Handle shtick, the Brashad Perryman Ferryman, lifeguard and training at your neighborhood Chase Claypool, and thinks your favorite team is run by donkeys, the ginger bearded man, Nick Bodiford. Guys, how we doing today?
Doing great, Pete.
Doing great.
Good, Pete. How are you?
I am doing well. You can tell it's going to be a successful podcast when, before we recorded, we peer pressured Clark into going and finding a hat as he wandered throughout his house to put on what the listeners can't see, but is a gorgeous, gorgeous Oilers hat. Might be the best hat out of all of us.
It is. It's confirmed. It is the best hat.
Good. I do like Jordan's pink hat. I have no idea what's on it, but the Velcro.
I took this one. Found it in the closet. It's a Corona Light hat.
Oh,
so,
Jordan's living on a beach right now.
You got to find your own beach when it's dark at 4:30 p.m. here in Wisconsin and cold as hell. So.
Oh my God, it is. Let me tell you, I vibe that hard here in New Hampshire, where I have to walk Bert at like 3:45. Otherwise, he won't go outside because it gets dark at like 4:15. And Bert, fun fact for you listeners at home, does not like to poop when it is dark outside. So we have to make sure he gets out there when there's still a little bit of light so he can see where he's pooping. All right, well, we got lots to talk about on the NFL docket. We are just going to run through Week 11, talk about some takeaways, because there was a lot of things that kind of went down that we want to make sure we're covering from the fantasy perspective. And then, of course, we'll leave you with some top waiver ads for Week 12. Guys, you should be targeting on the waiver wire. So let's jump right into the news. And the headline of this week's news is very sad, very upsetting for basically everyone in the NFL, as Joe Burrow got injured, tore his ACL, MCL, other ligaments in his knee. Basically, it exploded. He got tackled. I don't even know who hit him, but it was against the Washington football team. And you could tell right as the injury happened that he got rolled up on, and his knee bent the wrong way. It didn't look great. He was carted off the field. Obviously, there was lots of teammate emotion and opponent's emotion on display. And it just sucks because you see, we were watching, it was Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert and Tua to a little extent, but those two guys have just been incredible for their respective teams in their rookie year. And it absolutely blows to see Joe Burrow's season get cut short like it did. Jordan, we'll start with you. Obviously, this is a huge knock to the Bengals offense, which was already teetering. We saw it be absolutely nothing last year. And with the addition of Joe Burrow, it has turned into something. A lot of us have been relying on people in this offense for fantasy. Who do you think is the one player who is most impacted by Joe Burrow's absence on this Bengals offense?
Well, I would want to say Tyler Boyd, but he's the best wide receiver on the team, so he'll likely still get his targets. I might say if you're still trying to hope for some AJ Green points to come in, he's been getting still targets all the time from Joe Burrow. I think they've just been trying to establish that sort of connection with each other. So I don't think Ryan Finley is going to come in and provide that same sort of magic. Joe Mixon has been out, so I don't really know anybody else I would trust on this team outside of Boyd.
So an already struggling and difficult team to put trust in, anyone outside of Joe Mixon loses their quarterback, and I'm blanking. Burrow. There we go, Joe Burrow. The Bengals are absolutely atrocious, and Burrow was putting out Herculean efforts to make them even somewhat entertaining to watch. And with him gone, I'm looking to start any defense I can against the Bengals. And this is another incredibly sad chapter and an incredibly sad franchise. I'm abandoning all Bengals if I was holding out any hope, even in Dynasty. They're going to be terrible for a very very long time. And it looks like Joe Burrow, the tweets I'm seeing, ACL, MCL, and other stuff. This is not,
Awful.
I mean, hopefully quick injury, but like probably not a 6-month deal.
No.
So I'm just out on everyone.
Yeah, I've seen it all the way up to like a 12-month recovery, full year recovery, which would obviously impede his viability for 2021. It is just awful to see. Nick, what are you feeling about this Bengals offense now?
Well, so as far as the recovery window goes, I think I saw David Chow talking about a week 1 return is still possible. That's not necessarily an endorsement, but I guess that's better than not possible. I've been going over Ryan Finley's box scores from last year when he had a 3-game stint as the starter. And to be fair, there is some beat reporter. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but the Bengals beat reporters, the 2 main guys outside of Goodberry, Ben Baby and Tyler Dragon, have just fabulous names.
Incredible names.
Yeah. But so anyway, for the usable information here. So last year, Tyler Boyd had an average depth of target of around 8.4 yards. This year he's up to 9.2. Finley targeted Boyd and Auden Tate the most, with like 1 spike week from Alex Erickson. Boyd, I assume he's going to go back to that kind of safety blanket role. And since Tate has been kicked to the curb and T. Higgins is like a physical clone of him, I think that Higgins may be like the number 2 guy there. I'm not putting any money on Green or either of the tight ends. But one thing I did, other than I'll stop talking in a second here, but one thing that did stand out to me was they really ran the football a lot. Like in Finley's first start last year, Mixon had 30 carries. It dwindled a little bit, but they became a really run-heavy team. And Finley did have like 25 yards a game on the ground, but I think it's a really, really bad situation. And yeah, Boyd's probably the one pass catcher. But my question is, what do you guys think this does for Gio?
Yeah, this rockets Gio, because Joe Mixon's on IR right now. So he's out for at least 2 more weeks because they put him on prior to week 11. So he's going to have week 11, 12, and 13 on IR before he is allowed to move. And that's not even to say that he'll be back on the field by week 14. Gio is the clear-cut guy in that backfield. And I was just about to say, Nick, first, I hope T. Higgins continues to perform, because I have been very nicely relying on him in multiple of my fantasy leagues because he's been a nice little breakout stud. But for Gio, if they emphasize that ground game, which I'm sure they will, and just as we've seen with any kind of, young, not even young, backup quarterbacks, they love to, check it down to their running backs when they feel pressure, when they're under duress. And so I think Gio, being a pass catching back, and also someone who has shown that he can run between the tackles, with mild success, I think Gio is going to, see a big uptick in work from this injury, unfortunately. Fortunately for fantasy managers, unfortunately for the Bengals, and I would say the only guy in this Bengals offense that has like the biggest positive tick from this injury. I think that what you guys have said about Tyler Boyd makes a ton of sense too, where we might see Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins have been kind of competing for that number 1 gig with Joe Burrow under center, with T. Higgins seeing a little bit more work recently. But I wouldn't be surprised if that flips back to almost the entirely Tyler Boyd show with whatever his name is, Finley under center.
I was going to say, I do remember that Auden Tate, like little burst that he had at the end of last season. Like he was playable in deeper leagues because he was getting targeted. So there's a chance that Ryan Finley and T. Higgins also have some sort of connection, especially Higgins was running with the 2s earlier in the season. As far as Gio Bernard goes, I think he's at least playable in probably 3 of their last 5 games. There's only 5 weeks left until the championships, guys. Because they do have games against the Dolphins and the Steelers, which are going to be tough. But every other game around those, they have the Giants, Cowboys, and the Texans. So some playable matchups and some not so playable matchups.
So as you guys can hear, the dog's super pissed about this news. But or maybe he's quieting. Nah, there he is. Samaje Perine, though, he got 46% of the team's rushes, and I don't, or snaps, that is, last week. I don't think we should spend too much time on the Bengals, but I don't think he's going to do anything worthwhile for fantasy managers, but I think he might hurt
He
Bernard's
could catch
ceiling.
Geos. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a bummer. But seems very in keeping with the Bengals and just general football, not caring about fantasy football. You think they would respect us more. We are a vital part of the game. Let's move on to another injury. One of the only other major injuries that came out of week 11. Again, similar instance. We don't have confirmation on this, but I would say Rex Burkhead left the Patriots-Texans game with an injury, and it looked like his ACL got torn. He, again, got smacked right in the knee with his foot getting caught. Classic, what you've seen now is that is what makes the ACL tear. So this shakes up the Patriots backfield, which now has Damian Harris, James White, and Sony Michel came off IR. He didn't play week 11, but he is now back and healthy. And in that mix, a little bit of waiver wire work here. James White is available. I think he's only rostered in 40% of Yahoo leagues. He is going to be he is the pass catching back for New England. Now it's no longer between him and Burkhead. It is solely James White. Neither Damian Harris or Sony Michel are used in the passing game for the Patriots. So I think the James White is going to be a matchup play. Obviously, he's not a great runner between the tackles. That's not exactly how the Patriots use him. So you're going to be looking to get him in situations where the Patriots are down and need to pass to stay in the game, like they did against the Texans, where James White was far more used than Damian Harris and came away with a better fantasy output because of that. But it sucks to see Rex Burkhead leave with injury. He was a pretty do-it-all guy for them, both rushing and receiving, and had a couple of really nice fantasy games. But this does lend itself to a little more clarity in that Patriots backfield and some actionable takes you can do, which is going to stash James White, especially if you're in a PPR league.
Yeah, sucks to see Burkhead go down. Your analysis is spot on. I don't want to overly simplify or simply analyze this as, yeah, maybe things got more clear and then Sony Michel came back. So a still befuddling and confusing, potentially abundantly scoring backfield is still really befuddling and confusing and potentially abundantly scoring. I mean, Damian Harris is the guy to have and James White in PPR for sure, but remember Sony Michel had 6 really good games to close the season last year. So just, oh boy, I feel better about James White, but that's it.
Yeah, he looked really good against the Raiders too. I do want to say quickly, this kind of irked me during the Texans-Patriots game. First of all, well done, Clark. A battle well won.
Yeah, we did a really great job.
It really irked me, and I don't know who was commentating the game, but whoever the main guy was kept bringing up the fact in like a bad way that like Deshaun Watson was saying that he was putting together a really good season, and the commentator kept being like, I mean, he says he's got good stats, but I don't know about that record. I mean, that doesn't seem to be something to be touting when you have a bad record as a team. And it just rubbed me the wrong way. Like, Deshaun Watson should be touting his own stats because Deshaun Watson is playing incredibly. Deshaun Watson is playing like a top 5 quarterback in the league right now, and he's getting lost in this absolutely hot garbage Texans team. And so I'm fully here for a player of any stature to be like, hey, look, Deshaun Watson is doing what it takes, everything he can do to like make this Texans team a winning team, and it's just not happening. That irked me the wrong way. I don't know who the commentator was. If I did my research, I would know who it was, and I could shout him out name first, but I can't. So just wanted to say, using my platform, it rubbed me the wrong way.
Yeah, Pete, welcome to my world. When no one cares about your football team, you get the dregs of Announcer Society. Only through the retirement of Dan Deerdorf did the play-by-play situation in Houston improve.
The bleak existence you lead, Clark. I had it for a Sunday afternoon, and I don't relish it. All right, let's move on in the news. The biggest, outside of Joe Burrow getting injured, huge storyline that we went all into last week with, and it was on display, was the Taysom Hill experience in New Orleans. And what an incredible gig it was. We saw Taysom Hill at the helm. He was the surprise start instead of Jameis Winston because Sean Payton needs to see whether or not his 31-year-old quarterback, who had 18 career pass attempts up until that point, was their franchise quarterback of the future after Drew Brees retires. Yes, those are not lies that I am saying. Nick, what did you see out of the first week of Taysom Hill-ness in New Orleans in terms of fantasy? Obviously, he had a good fantasy game, but what about those surrounding him?
Well, I mean, Mike Thomas looked like the target monster of old. I don't think the target totem pole was not very close. It was Mike Thomas with 12. Sanders had 5, and the next highest was 2. Of course, this really hurts Alvin Kamara's ceiling. He had 1 target, 0. I'm sure 0 catches. I'm sure everybody's heard at this point. It's the first game of his career in 54 games where he's not caught a pass. That's terrible for his ceiling. That said, they have great matchups, so I'm not that worried about it. But he was a beast rushing, and I think it was kind of goofy that they actually just stuck to their typical New Orleans Saints offense. I don't know if that was Breeze just saying, or Peyton telling everybody to F off, but they did it, and they won. I'm totally spacing. I was just going to complain about the fact that ESPN like an hour ago announced that they're taking away Taysom Hill's tight end eligibility. And I remember being really happy when they rapidly adjusted Ty Montgomery's running back viability in Green Bay when he became a running back. But this seems like something that maybe could have been taken care of before everybody used their waiver wire picks to go get themselves a tight end. I don't know what you guys have to say about that, but it rubbed me the wrong way.
It rubbed Nick the wrong way. A show about rubbing people the wrong way.
Yeah, Hill looked pretty good. Not like a fantastic quarterback, but certainly good enough to move the offense. He seemed to understand that Michael Thomas is extremely good, and he was going to throw him the ball no matter what, which is fantastic for Thomas owners. You hit on how this limits Kamara, but the Saints actually looked okay. So I think we're still okay running the guys that we wanted to out against them. Surprised Latavius Murray didn't get more run, and wouldn't be surprised if he does get more next game.
Yeah, this is probably just a really good game to trot out Taysom Hill at quarterback because Atlanta's defense is just flat out not good. It definitely hurts Alvin Kamara's fantasy viability if Taysom Hill's not going to pepper him with a few more targets and have them all going towards Michael Thomas, which, inversely helps out Michael Thomas. Taysom Hill looked fine as a quarterback. His upside from fantasy perspective comes from the fact that he is a threat to just take off, and running him out on some boot action and getting him into some open spaces will definitely benefit the Saints, make them a little bit more dynamic. And I'm glad I didn't face Taysom Hill anywhere this week. The only tight end that outscored him, or heavy air quotes, tight end that outscored him was Travis Kelce. So I'm just glad that didn't happen. I wish they would have just made some sort of designation beforehand. Like I get that the Saints use him as a tight end before all of this happened, but I don't know. Switch it once he's being called the starting QB because Anyway,
let that also be evidence to Clark's point of Travis Kelce should be worth a first-round pick in your fantasy drafts because he outscored a quarterback playing at the tight end position. So, Travis Kelce should be a first-round draft pick in your fantasy drafts because the man has been like the tight end 3 or tight end 1 the last 4 weeks, and the only time he wasn't was because the Chiefs were on a bye. So he's been incredible this year. So, yeah, the Alvin Kamara target share is. I'll be interested to see what next week holds, but it's definitely worrisome because of the fact that when quarterbacks get in trouble, when Drew Brees got in trouble, when pressure was there, he would quickly just dump it off to Kamara or get rid of the ball quickly. Whereas Taysom Hill will scramble instead of dumping it off, and so we could see Kamara just basically see that passing game not completely erased for as long as Brees is out, but at the very least, certainly diminished greatly, where you're now going to be having Kamara have to get those points through primarily the ground as opposed to as a pass catching back. They might scheme some ways in to get him more involved in the passing game after what was just kind of a, first game with Taysom Hill under center. Like you're going to just kind of get the win and get out of there with it. So we might see more Alvin Kamara, but I wouldn't be surprised if Kamara's target share drops with Taysom Hill under center. So that's the biggest thing I would take away from the Saints offense now. All right, we're going to take a quick break for some advertisements. All right, back to some week 11 takeaways. All right, talking about another backfield, 2 backfields. We finally saw rookie running backs who we've been waiting to see them take over their respective backfields. It came to fruition with J.K. Dobbins for the Ravens taking over that backfield and Jonathan Taylor taking over the backfields in Indianapolis. Dobbins had 15 carries compared to 3 from Gus Edwards and 2 from Mark Ingram against the Titans. And then Jonathan Taylor against the Packers, 22 carries versus 6 from Nyheim Hines and 4 from Jordan Wilkins. This is great news for these owners, right, Clark? Except for the fact that J.K. Dobbins now has COVID. But other than that, do you think that this is now the week? We've seen the week now where these backfields are officially. We'll start with the Colts, I guess, because J.K. Dobbins, like I said, J.K. Dobbins and Mark Ingram both have COVID, so they're out. So it's fire up Gus the Bus. But specifically for the Colts, Clark, do you think that we've seen this transition now officially made where it is Jonathan Taylor's backfield and we no longer have to stress and worry about it being split between 3 different backs?
No, sorry. I think Nyheim Hines is still the back to own, and this was just a Taylor week. We've seen Wilkins get a lot of run before, and I think it just happened to be Taylor this time. They're still very happy to spread the ball around. Watching the game, I didn't think Taylor really stood out as just an amazing can't take him off the field guy. The other backs, well, Jordan Wilkins looked like Jordan Wilkins, but Nyheim Hines looked like Nyheim Hines. So nothing new in Indianapolis. I think Dobbins, on the other hand, is the best back. And that's saying a lot because I really like Gus Edwards. And Dobbins looked like the best back and a more versatile back than Gus Edwards. So I think that this is a sign that he's stepping into that leading role. He'll still share because they just run the ball too much to just have one running back, but still not sold on Taylor being the absolute bell cow, but Dobbins is working his way towards it.
So Justice Hill lives. Is that where we're at?
Oh, is he it's only Gus Edwards. Is Justice Hill now behind Gus Edwards? Now the Ravens' top 2 backs are, well, there you go. Facing the Pittsburgh Steelers Thursday. Let's do this.
So it's an easy matchup. We have nothing to worry about. Nothing could go wrong.
Definitely.
No, don't get on the Justice Hill bandwagon. Edwards, obviously top waiver wire pick. I just want to call John Harbaugh a complete asshole for breaking COVID protocol. Well, we can do that.
Also, the end of the game where he just completely shunned Mike Vrabel because the Titans were in their head.
Oh, well, I mean, Vrabel tried to fight it. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
get the fuck out of here, John Harbaugh. Get out of here, Harbaugh.
But I mean, they to my understanding, they broke COVID protocol. They had people test positive on game day and did not alert the NFL, which you're not supposed to play if you have that. And they just quarantined them and played anyway. And now you put a whole bunch of people in jeopardy. And I mean, if caring about COVID isn't your thing, well, now you put games in jeopardy because we don't know what the fallout from this is going to be. So I don't know, just total asshole. Go add Gus Edwards. Are we on to the Colts side of things?
Sure. You can talk about the Colts.
The only thing I'll say is that this is like the exact kind of trap situation that I don't think any fantasy manager wants to be in. The Titans defense is just terrible. And Jonathan Taylor looking down the barrel of this matchup, it looks great, right? Like if you're in the playoff hunt and Jonathan Taylor just did this for you that last week and now he gets the Titans, I don't know how you sit him, but like, I don't think, can you guys trust any of these guys? I know, Clark, I think you just said that Hines is still the top dog there, but do you feel comfortable starting any of the 3 as more than a flex play?
Nope.
Jordan's pondering.
No, I think that Nyheim Hines, they've been using him a lot as like a slot guy, and Paris Campbell is in no way close to coming back. So that spot is a little bit of a vacancy right now. And I think that's pushing targets away from some other players possibly. But Jordan Wilkins, I think if Jonathan Taylor continues to hold on to the ball and have good games, then that pushes Jordan Wilkins down the depth chart. As far as the Ravens go, I think it's really about time that they just started to unleash J.K. Dobbins and put the football in his hands, because literally every time he has the ball in his hands, he hits the hole. He looks like a cannonball being shot out of a cannon. Like, he just looks way more explosive than the other two running backs. And I did not. They've been struggling all year. Their record 6-4, but they look like they're a much worse team than that because their offense has been struggling, and they continue to, I don't know why, but they just really want to give Mark Ingram and Gus Edwards carries, and they don't need to do that.
Agreed. All right. Also in the news, we had a kind of bounce back game for the Dallas Cowboys offense. Admittedly, it was against the Minnesota Vikings, which a defense that everyone has taken advantage of so far this year. But we did see both CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper return to fantasy relevance. Cooper had 7 targets, caught 6 of them for 81 yards, and CeeDee Lamb carried the ball twice for 12 yards, but also 6 targets, 4 catches, 34 yards, and a touchdown. And let me say, if you haven't seen CeeDee Lamb's touchdown, go watch it because it was absolutely incredible. It was an amazing readjustment on the ball and catch. So my question to you, Nick, we'll start it off. Have Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb return to that, like, they are must-start guys. They are guys you should confidently always be having in your lineup from here on out.
I think yes. I think yes is the answer here. But I think more importantly, week 12 is going to be illustrative of what we might see the Cowboys do in week 16. So this week they've got the Washington football team, great defensive line, very little in the secondary. Meanwhile, Philadelphia in week 16, championship week, great defensive line. They do have Slay, but they're getting toasted by receivers. So I think that the way that Dallas attacks week 12, their week 12 matchup is going to kind of tell us what they might do in week 16. So I would feel comfortable starting both CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper this week. Probably also Dalton Schultz, Michael Gallup, no way. But those other 3, yeah. And just keep this in mind, the way that they go about week 12. Keep that in mind for week 16 if you're so lucky to have made it there.
Yeah, I'm probably having Amari Cooper at least as a wide receiver too, just given his history and his general skill, and CeeDee Lamb as a flex option. I think even with the sloppy quarterback play, the Cowboys have kind of shown that they want to figure out how to get the ball into CeeDee Lamb's hands, whether that's in the passing game, letting him run the ball, or even grabbing some punt returns. So they know what kind of dynamic player they have there, and that's just good usage is good for fantasy. So
yeah, Dalton proves to be competent in his return, and so that's good for all of the Cowboys. I don't know how excited you want to get because he's certainly not as good as Dak Prescott, but all the Ezekiel Elliott owners are breathing a slight sigh of relief now that touchdowns should be coming back to Dallas.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough road these next 2 games. They play Washington and then they play Baltimore, both of which have solid defenses. So it'll be interesting to see what the Cowboys offense looks like through those games. But after that, if they do, play through those and look serviceable, they play Cincinnati, play San Francisco, and then they play the Eagles. So that Cincinnati game could be a nice little boost. But if they, we have seen this offense, if this offense is going to be moving the ball more effectively, they're going to be relying on those 3 guys, Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, and Ezekiel Elliott. That seems pretty set in stone with Dalton Schultz kind of spiced in there. So I would agree with the general consensus. I think I have CeeDee Lamb in one of my leagues, and I had, up until this point, been benching him. I played him against the Vikings just because I was like, all right, the Vikings are trash. And I think he's now back in my starting lineup. And I will leave him there regardless, unless he, posts back-to-back shitty performances. But even then, those will probably be against Washington and the Ravens. And then I'll give him a shot against the Bengals. A guy who did not get, he did get a shot, but it didn't turn out well. The Dolphins benched Tua Tagovailoa in his 3rd start against the Broncos. He went 11 for 20, but was not pushing the ball downfield. Only 83 yards. He did throw a touchdown, but was not moving the ball. The offense was looking stagnant. They put in Ryan Fitzpatrick. Of course, Ryan Fitzpatrick goes 12 for 18, throws 117, while also throwing a pick, which ultimately sealed the game. But was pushing the ball down the field, was moving it. It seems like Tua is going to continue to be the starter. It looked like Brian Flores just made that move solely to try to win that game. But Jordan, should we be worried for those who are relying on Tua, or just for this offense, that this offense maybe is going to be in flux, especially the passing game, if Brian Flores is going to be bouncing between Ryan Fitzpatrick and Tua Tagovailoa if Tua ever struggles again?
I've been generally on board with the Brian Flores just unit and what they've been able to do in Miami, but this decision was ultimately really curious.
It was weird.
Bench Tua. I know, like, statistically he wasn't really pushing it down the field, but the offense as a whole, it's hard to put it all on Tua. They're not exactly operating with the best weapons out there. I mean, Salvin Ahmed only had 43 yards on 12 carries. So it's not exactly like the running game was much support. Missing Myles Gaskin in this game for sure. They should have just given him the opportunity to try to dig himself out of a hole. It's kind of like they hid him from the adversity. They didn't really rely on their quarterback, who is a championship caliber quarterback from college and played on one of the best football teams we've seen in recent memory in the BCS. So I think that it's just a curious decision to me. I think going forward, we'll probably see Tua back. You just got to hope for Ryan Fitzpatrick doesn't keep on making some weird appearances in these games halfway through.
Yeah, I think we'll all forget about this once he toasts the Jets.
There's nothing gets you right quite like playing the Jets, who Justin Herbert threw for like 250 yards in the first 10 minutes of that game. Also, Justin Herbert's haircut did not diminish his powers, which thank God, because I was worried that looking like Sid from Toy Story was going to tank his prospects. All right, last point in the news. This is just an open-ended question, and we'll start with you, Clark, because good effing Lord, if you watch the Eagles-Browns game, Carson Wentz has just been struggling all season. That much is obvious, and he threw one of the absolutely ugliest pick sixes I have ever seen, where he just basically threw up a lame duck to Miles Sanders while getting smacked, and I forget his name. It was an amazing name. It's like Taka or something like that for the Taki. There you go. Picks it off because it's just a fucking rainbow of a pass and runs it in for a touchdown. So, Clark, should the Eagles bench Carson Wentz?
So I feel like there's a lot of really interesting ways to ask this question, and I think how you ask it determines the answer. It's, should the 3-7 or 3-6-1 Eagles bench Carson Wentz? That sounds really compelling. Should the first place 3-6-1 Eagles bench Carson Wentz?
Eagles.
Yeah. So no, I mean, because while Carson Wentz has been playing really, really poorly, who are you going to bench him for? Some rookie who has gotten into games and hasn't really looked that great, just been given some running plays. So maybe he's really good. Maybe he's one of these guys that comes into the league and just absolutely lights it up. There's that 3% chance that that's it. He's probably going to be worse than Carson Wentz playing behind that still terrible offensive line with no wide receivers, not named Travis Fulgham. So no, you don't bench him, even though, man, you just wonder if all of the teams could elect to not win the division. It looks like they'd all throw their hat in the ring.
I don't think a single team in the NFC East is striving to win that division. Except
Alex Smith is going to lead Washington to a 6-10 playoff berth.
Hell yeah. I am here for, I was just about to say, maybe Washington, though even still, they need a franchise quarterback, but maybe Alex Smith can hold them over for a couple of years.
Alex Smith is the best quarterback in the East right now. And that's not a hot take. It's just Andy Dalton and what happened to Carson Wentz. I mean, sorry, Daniel Jones. That's not.
Yeah, Daniel Jones.
Come on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this kind of all falls on Doug Peterson, and I know Wentz is kind of broken right now, but the lack of success in the post John DeFilippo and Frank Reich world seems to be glaring, at least to me. I don't think bringing a rookie quarterback in, like you said, for the first place team in the NFC East, Clark, is good process. And as just an aside, I hope that they give out 2 Comeback Player of the Year awards, one for Alex Smith and one for Cam, because I think that this is kind of a unique season where we've had 2 guys come back from some pretty crazy injuries. And I think any other year Cam would be taking this no problem, but it's going to be Alex Smith, given that he went from nearly losing his leg to now, playing in the NFL again.
Yeah, Alex Smith seems to clear luck, but I mean, I can't hate any Cam love.
They've ponied up for a couple co-MVPs, so I think they can do the same for comeback player. You got to think.
What's happening to Carson Wentz, because don't forget Carson Wentz, he did tear his ACL a couple years ago and had a back injury, and like you really hope this is the thing where it's like, yes, the medicine has drastically improved and surgery has been, ACL is not the doomsday that it once was for a career, obviously. But these are the kinds of things where it's like, this is why the Joe Burrow injury is like absolutely terrible and why the Bengals should be like held accountable for not putting at least a halfway decent offensive line around him, because we've seen RG3, it completely tanked RG3's career. Carson Wentz has been, clearly something is not right with Carson Wentz, even till like this is 2 or 3 years afterwards. Like you really hope that this didn't just like completely tap what Joe Burrow's ceiling is going to be when we saw what the potential was endless there.
So I haven't sat down and watched like 6 Philly games in a row, but I try to watch them every week. And every week, Carson Wentz, 1, looks like he misses a few plays, but 2, just looks under complete duress the rest of the time. And then the plays that he does make seemingly are sabotaged by everyone else not named Miles Sanders on the team. So I think that he is kind of seeing ghosts, and I think that he has slowed. He has a really long wind-up and delivery. And when things are cooking, that looks great. But when you're getting pressured, that's how you throw 50-yard interceptions. That's how you get fumbles. That's how you do all that stuff. I think a lot of the Eagles' problems are a lot deeper than Carson Wentz, though. My point being, Miles Sanders is good. Travis Fulgham is good, but that offensive line is just completely maligned, and that team just is completely in shambles and in first place in the NFC East.
How are you guys treating him against Seattle this week? I mean, this is
what do you mean?
Best.
Like, you're not starting Carson Wentz, are you?
What about any of the pass catchers?
No.
Fulgham.
Yeah, so I mean, that's really? Are you going with Fulgham or are you going with Rieger?
I would go with I would maybe go with Bo. I would use Rieger as like a DFS flyer because he's probably going to be like $4,000, and you're just like, fuck it, let's see.
Like Nelson Aguilar, who's like 27%, something like that owned, or Travis Fulgham. I don't know how to say it. However you say it.
Oh, I would go Nelson Aguilar.
Right, and Nelson Aguilar's free and available.
Aguilar's been balling.
Well, he's laid 2 huge duds when I've
decided
decided
to play.
Clark.
He's been balling.
He's incredible. His box scores are just go look
best.
at him.
It's like 3.
It's a roller
Randy
coaster.
Moss level. It's 2 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown. I love it.
But yeah, there's just a lot of guys on waivers that I would rather play, even though I think Fulham is really good. The Eagles look cursed.
Yeah,
I don't know.
And it has gotten me worried about Miles Sanders too.
That offensive line has just been – it's not like they haven't been trying to put together like a decent offensive line and get the right pieces there, but they've just been absolutely decimated with injuries. And injuries happen to every other team. So it's like even when you're down to your second string guys along that line, it's about can you get them to play together as a unit? Can you coach them up? I mean, like if I can brag about the one bright spot for the Packers yesterday, it's that they moved Elton Jenkins to center and they were fine. Like that's a pretty tricky move to make, but they still did it and they're able to rotate things in and out and put the pieces together. So if you're a Philly fan, you're sitting here like, well, why can't we just like get a decent line going? And as far as Carson Wentz goes, like I know it was raining yesterday in Cleveland, but that pick 6 was one of the worst passes I've seen this season. It was tough. He's doing his best like Jameis impression.
Yeah, it was rough.
Except without the yardage.
Or the 31 touchdowns. I meant to say this when we were talking about J.K. Dobbins, or when we were talking about Mark Cooper and CeeDee Lamb, because they played the Vikings. Adam Thielen is on the COVID-19 list. So that doesn't mean he has it. but it does mean that he likely will miss this week. We shall see. Ben Roethlisberger was put on the list and then played that game that week. So, but hopefully Adam Thielen, who has come back in a major way, scoring 2 touchdowns in back-to-back games, is healthy and will be playing for week 12, whatever week we're in. If not, Justin Jefferson's about to ball out. All right, before we go, quickly, everyone, one waiver wire target, your top guy. Clark, who you got?
So this is long-term, and for teams that are cruising pretty easily into the playoffs and you have a spot, Cam Akers is just really good, and I don't understand why he's not getting the ball. He's only owned in about 30% of leagues. So this isn't an addition for you to pick up and play this week. I just don't know how the second-round pick for this year doesn't get more play at some point during this year. So go pick him up while he's free, because I just feel like the Rams are going to go to him.
Nick, what about you?
I don't know, because I didn't see this part of the show notes.
Jordan, what about you?
So this one might be a little bit tough, but I'm going with Des Bryant. He's 43% rostered in leagues. He got 5 targets yesterday, and
you're damn right he did.
Already kind of looks like the best receiver that Baltimore has. If J.K. Dobbins and Mark Ingram miss extended time, that might be forcing them to throw the ball a little more than they would like. And they play the Steelers next week, but they do have matchups against the Cowboys, against the Jaguars, against the Giants. And in week 14, they play the Browns, who have been relatively solid, but I think that they can play them pretty tough. So
I played all you guys because I actually wanted to tell you about Michael Pittman Jr.
No, you son of a bitch! That was mine. All right.
Oh, that's.
Go ahead,
okay.
Nick. You deserve it because you didn't do your notes until now.
Yeah, I just fucked up the show. Well, anyway, he's been great back-to-back weeks. He gets Tennessee, Houston, Las Vegas, Houston over the next 4 weeks.
Hey.
Pittsburgh in the championship, but I mean, for 4 weeks straight, he's gonna crush.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. All right, I will go with let's go with Rashard Higgins. Give him a little bit of love. We haven't seen the Browns passing game for like the last 3 weeks because of the fact that they've just been in like a torrential windstorm that's just like hovering over Cleveland. But you still like the target share that Higgins has got. He's seen at least 4 targets in 3 of the Browns' last 4 games, which doesn't sound much, but Baker has averaged 23 pass attempts in those games because of the aforementioned windstorm. And they get to play the Jaguars next. So I like Rashard Higgins to still be a viable part of this Browns passing game when they decide to pass. He's also had 48 yards or more in those last 3 games. So he's getting the ball and he's doing stuff with it. So Rashard Higgins, take a flyer on him. Why not? This is what happens when Nick throws me a curveball and makes me pick on the fly. Like an
I'm
asshole.
done with waivers. I'm so happy that Nick Chubb is back and Nick Chubb again.
Did you see that stiff arm where he just ended a man's career?
As senior vice president of the Nick Chubb fan club, I love watching him play. He's so good.
He is very, very effing good. I apologize. I think I had some take during the offseason where Kareem Hunt was the better running back, and for that, I apologize.
Kareem Hunt is also very good. That's really frustrating as someone who has acquired Nick Chubb just everywhere. Is the only reason he's not Dalvin Cook is because of that pesky Kareem Hunt.
And I would have gotten away
watching them hammer Kareem Hunt at the goal line yesterday was incredibly frustrating. Like it was very tough.
All right. Well, there you go. That's a good old week 11 takeaways and some recap in. Make sure you subscribe to the Fake Teams podcast wherever you get your podcasts. iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher. That's how you'll not only get us, but also our fantasy baseball and fantasy basketball podcasts. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at RB1 Podcast. Follow myself at Pete M. Rogers. Follow Clark at NFL Clark. Jordan at Jordan_Smith27. And Nick at Ginger__Nick without a K. We will be back at you on Thursday, Thanksgiving, I believe. Wow, we didn't even talk about how people are celebrating Thanksgiving. Hopefully home and safe. We'll have starts and sits for you then. Until then, peace.